Hey, welcome to the Ordinary Black Professionals. I'm Nicole,
And I'm Stefan.
and this week we're talking about a news article that was released by the BBC this week where the title says Black Bosses Shut Out by Vanilla Boys Club. And what this essentially means is that for the first time in 6 years, there are no black chairs, chiefs executives, or finance chiefs. There are less black people at the top of FTSE 100 companies than there has been for many, many years.
Yeah.
How do you feel about this, Steph?
Well, I'm surprised, I think, because there's been quite a drive towards diversity, I think, in a lot of companies, especially those large FTSE 100 companies, right?
Mm,
But at the top, um, you know, you said there's none in the last 6 years.
yeah, no black
Yeah.
chairs, executives, finance chiefs.
Yeah. I'm not really surprised that there's not a lot. I'm just surprised that there's none in 6 years,
Mm,
you know?
mm.
Especially, they don't all have to be CEO, they just could be chief executives. But yeah.
So I found this article through my client. It was posted on their kind of Black network, and I decided to share it at my own company. And when I read it, I was outraged. I was
Hmm.
so angry. And I was angry for lots of different reasons, partly because a lot of companies, I think, make a front that they want to hire more black people into the company. But then when it comes to actually progressing them and caring about their career and recognizing that black people face a ceiling,
Yep.
a glass ceiling, then they don't want to support them in reaching those higher positions.
Yeah.
And I was also angry because I felt like people don't realize that this is a problem. I'm tired of telling people again and again and again that in wider society, Black Lives Matters, Black lives just don't really matter. And I'm tired of having to almost convince people that that's the case. And seeing this kind of reconfirmed again that in the corporate world, how well we do, how far we progress, just doesn't actually matter. And I felt really, really vexed. And then I was writing the post to share this article on in my company, kind of using our like a tool that we use to share information. I was writing it and I was feeling really, really angry that this was even the case and that despite lots of stuff that companies are doing or whatever, it's just not good enough and the racial equality is becoming less and less and less and we are taking steps backwards. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous.
As I say, I'm not surprised that there's none at the top. I'm just surprised that there has been zero movement at all. I think at the top level, CEOs, CFOs, we need to push more diversity because, as we know already, like leadership comes from the top.
Mm,
Yeah, leadership comes from um, people at the top pushing their ideas, pushing the direction of the company, and pushing direction of the companies also changes society. Okay, because people spend 5 days of the week at work and two on the weekend, and those 5 days are, you know, you're being shaped of how to communicate with your peers, how to work together, all that type of thing are happening in those 5 days. And that should include diverse conversations with diverse people, people working together, sharing ideas. When you've got diversity at the top, you also have people understanding the different ways in which to communicate with different audiences, right? And we see time and time again in different industries where you have to communicate with your audience, whether that's your target market or whoever it is, that if you don't have understanding at the top, foolishness happens, right?
yeah.
And I think,
And we've seen that before with
yeah,
things like H&M when they did the post around Cheeky Little Monkey, and then they had somebody, a little black boy wearing that hoodie. Regardless of whether the family were comfortable with that or not, it's just the fact that there's an insensitivity there,
Yeah.
and that for that to have gone out for press, the amount of people who would have had to have seen that and been
Mm,
like, yes, 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 yes. You know what I mean? They got many, 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 many ticks across the board,
yeah.
but yet still it got sent out because someone hadn't said, or I don't think we should really be like referring to a black person as a monkey. There's lots of negative connotations of that, or someone did raise it, and because of more than likely that person's seniority,
Yeah.
it just got shut down.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, we don't want to listen to you. You don't.
Mm.
What do you know, you junior person?
But if you have diversity sprinkled across the company, right, then
At different levels.
at all these different levels, including the very top, then you see that if someone raises that, then there is a voice to be heard somewhere. That in somewhere
Exactly.
in the company, higher up understands, yeah, we shouldn't be doing that, right?
Yeah.
Even if the CEO, CFO, whoever it is, doesn't see that advert before it goes out, there's people at different levels. It can move up the chain, you know. But when it's just you don't have that diversity or understanding in the company, it just gets
It
shut
just gets
down.
shut down
Yeah,
completely.
yeah.
And that doesn't
There's
just.
that other situation with John Boyega.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember the
I don't
company it was,
remember.
some perfume or something that
Yeah.
he advertised, and he created the advertisement himself. He It was all about his experiences, his family, his culture, and then they took all his ideas and just translated it into a Chinese guy, and it was not the same. As
Mm,
you cannot take someone's culture and just switch it into something else. They're two different cultures. There should be
mm,
two different designs, two different things, two different audiences, right? And there's a sensitivity as well about why John Boyega did those things, why he chose to do those things, and now he doesn't want to work with them anymore, you know?
mm.
So so there's lots of these situations of where um, not having that diversity, you know, going back to it, not having that diversity at the top of these FTSE 100 firms or even FTSE 500 firms is hurting,
Yeah.
you know.
Hurts your brand, hurts your reputation. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's not even just experiences of people of people of color, it's also experiences of those who sit within the LGBTQ community, and also women as well, and anyone really who falls within an oppressed or marginalized group. I just couldn't agree more why it's that is so important, as you said, to have that sprinkle of diversity across the business. What I can't understand and what angers me so much is why, like, some businesses can't see that, don't understand it, don't get it. I don't understand and don't get why it's not invested in as much as marketing, finance, recruitment. You've got companies out there that don't even want to invest in having a proper D&I person in the company.
Hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Which kind of says, actually, I don't view it in the same way as marketing, as finance. I don't give it that.
It's not important.
It's not important. In my mind, that's basically what you're saying. I don't give it that same weight, that same value. I don't hold it in that same esteem as I would marketing.
You know what's funny
And
about that
that's
particular
the
point?
big, and that tells me you don't get it.
Yeah,
You don't get it.
you know what's funny about that particular point is that these companies always want to praise culture. You
Mm,
know, especially if you're a smaller company, you want to praise culture and say, we have an amazing culture. Um, Everyone loves working here.
mm,
We have bean bags or we have these benefits which are amazing, but there's no mention of D&I, right? Because they don't consider that to be either important to their culture or part of their culture, or they think it's already in the culture. It's just there. It's not that
oh,
we
that's
have
the
to do
worst thing.
something for it, or it's not that, you know, we just the type of people who just feel like we're diverse, like we're nice guys, is there, you know, is
And this is
inbuilt.
and this is
It's not inbuilt.
this is fundamentally wrong thinking. That is fundamentally wrong. The idea that the diversity inclusion is already embedded into your culture. That thinking alone, I'm sorry to anyone out there who's listening who thinks that's the case. I'm telling you now for free that that is wrong. Yes, diversity is about, making sure that we have diverse individuals, people from marginalized society and then those who are not walking through the door in the company. But it's also making sure that those individuals have a space where they feel, comfortable and they feel like they can reach those senior positions, regardless of their background. So that's kind of one aspect of diversity. But it's also making sure that your policies, your decision making, um, all of that stuff embody an organization that equally um that treats everyone the same regardless of their background. So it's making sure that with things like pay rises, that you're looking at not just the gender split, but you're looking at, okay, well, do white women get paid more than women of color? Like what's the split there? And making sure that there is policies in place that don't disproportionately affect a particular individual. So it's a whole much bigger piece than getting specific types of people into an organization. And then inclusivity is making sure people feel like they truly belong there, that the culture embodies everybody in the company, not just those who like to drink or who like football or who are really into Afro beats or whatever it is. It's making sure that every single person in that company feels like they belong and have a place and have a stake in that company and they feel included. To say that the culture that you have already is going to, you know, just naturally, without you doing any work, without you thinking about it, without, any thinking, research, understanding of these different groups in the company, that's just going to be,
Yeah.
is wrong. Doesn't make any sense. How could you, how could, if you say, you really, our culture is really good, how can it just organically be that men and women are paid fairly? How can it just organically be that women hit those C-suite positions, that black women hit those C-suite positions? How can that organically be when essentially we come from a society that is inherently unequal,
Yeah.
that is racist, that is misogynistic, that is homophobic? How can that be when we don't live in a society that innately treats people equally? It doesn't make sense because those same prejudices, isms that we have outside of society, they will naturally bleed and work their way into our work life.
Yeah.
So why would work be so different to our outside society and norms? Why would work be this, it's not a microcosm and it's completely siloed from the prejudices and the inequalities that we face or that happens in the real world. When you walk into those doors of office of the workplace, it is not um, protected from the inequalities of the real world. That is just not the case. If someone's a thief in their personal life, that same attributes of being a thief is going to be in the work life. It doesn't suddenly change the moment they walk into
Yeah.
the office. Doesn't it suddenly change when they walk into they dial into a Zoom call. That is what people don't understand. And I just can't, you know, I don't get it. I'm tired of explaining it.
Yeah.
It's just boring to me right now. If you don't get it, I don't know what to tell you.
Well, I think there's
If
another thing as well. Perception. Like we already know that people believe they can be what they see they can be.
mm,
So if you are an engineer, if you see someone being an engineer, then you know it's possible for you to be an engineer, right? Um, we're not seeing people, of color or of diverse backgrounds, of any type of background, um, being at the highest level in these companies.
mm,
Is that something I can be? Can I achieve that? How do I achieve that? It's probably extremely difficult. And I'm sure, first of all, it's very difficult to achieve that job for anyone because there's not a lot of those positions, right?
mm,
But there are still hundreds or thousands of those positions available, and there are still many people with the talents capable of achieving that level. And we are just not seeing people of different backgrounds achieving it.
Mm.
Now, that makes us feel, people who are currently in those positions, or even your children, think that's not something that I can
I
be,
can be.
right? And this goes down, not just down to up to the highest levels, yeah, this goes down to also day-to-day jobs, things that people do every day. So let's say I am an engineer and I'm working on projects, I'm delivering IT solutions, right?
Hmm.
But in my position in the IT industry, I don't get a lot of diversity. It's been improving a bit over the last few years, but it's really don't get a lot of diversity. Now, anyone who, I've spoken before in a previous episode about walking up into interviews and them not believing that I could be the person that they are hiring
Mm.
because I do not look like the engineer, right? And I know black women face this a lot because there's a lot of black women engineers out there, in IT industry or other industries, which is a male-dominated industry, which
Mm.
is even harder for them because they don't even believe it could be a woman that could be turning up for that job,
Mm.
you know? So I turn up there and people don't believe that it could be me, right? But my experiences in the past and the people that I've worked with in the past has shown that I can do this job. I'm very competent at this job, and therefore anybody who has worked with me in the past and will hire someone in the future to this job will always remember, oh yes, I have seen not only uh, I've seen a diverse background of people doing this job, and it literally could be anyone in their mind,
Mm.
right? Because a lot of the time when people hire someone or want to hire someone, they have a vision, a
They do.
picture
They
of
do.
who they are
It's an
hiring.
it's an unconscious bias,
Yeah, it's all about
and they're not
unconscious
even
bias.
aware of it, but you have an idea. In the
Yeah,
same way, when you think surgeon and doctor, you're thinking of a man.
right.
It's that kind of thing.
So my Filipino colleague who's seen me work in my job and in the future is going to hire someone, I have just because they've seen me work, they've
Yeah.
worked with me and they've seen how competent I am. I have broken down that unconscious bias, at least a little bit, in their mind of who they're hiring to do that job in the future.
Yeah.
And that is helping towards achieve that goal of a little bit more diversity. So when they're going to hire someone, they are not assigning that bias of you cannot do
Yeah.
this, you
I
can do
agree.
this.
I agree totally.
Yeah, so
But
it's all about perception.
yeah, definitely. Definitely. It's the perception, and I also think it's actually really wanting to make the change and not making excuses. So I know sometimes, and I've had people say this to me at interviews because I'll say, "Oh, there's hardly any women in your, that are director, like for smaller companies that are director levels, that are X and X level." And I've actually had a woman say to me, not at my current company, a company I've interviewed at, had a woman say to me who was director level, "Oh, but it's really hard to get female directors at this level because of having children, because of X, Y, and Z." And what I heard come out of her mouth was excuse after excuse after excuse.
Yeah,
If you want, if you're a company and you want to hire women, female directors, and that is something that you want to have, you will make that a priority in your strategy. How
exactly.
do you make that priority in your strategy? Maybe you need to, readjust your financials and increase the mat leave benefit that you give.
Yeah,
A lot of women will, at the back, when you know you want to have children, you're kind of planning it and thinking, okay, so this company here, mat leave, do I want to leave? They're offering me X amount of compensation, maternity leave benefits, and it's really good. And so therefore you will not leave for the, if you work at an Accenture, I know they offer quite a good benefit package, a maternity package. You're not going to leave, one of those big companies, an Accenture, Deloitte, whatever it is, to go work for a small company where they say to you, oh, well, you can get a benefit, you can get maternity leave, but you've got to work 2 years first
mm,
before you even get it. Why would I leave? And I'm a director, I think about having kids. Or having my more children. Why would I leave? So to wait 2 years to then get my money? or I can just have my kids here at Accenture
Yeah.
and be perfectly fine. It's things like that that you have to make that financial investment if this is something that you care about. It just is what it is. Or it may be the case that, okay, I don't, we need to, we're not, we don't want to necessarily hire outside talent. We need to grow the talent within the organization. Maybe it's a case of ensuring that you have female to female mentorship.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a case of you saying, okay, so here's all these female employees. I'm going to see what external mentorships available to them to help them grow. I'm going to have focus groups and conversations to understand why are females not putting themselves up for promotion? Why are we not getting enough women to kind of break the glass ceiling? What is it? What is going on? It requires investment and it requires work. And unfortunately, I think a lot of the smaller companies don't actually really want to do the work.
Right.
Like, maybe I could be wrong, but I think they don't want to invest in an individual to do the work, in aka a DNI, a full-time DNI individual. And then they don't want and if they can't afford that, they don't want to have a team that really think about it and really challenge themselves on what they're saying, really say, are we doing the best that we can, as opposed to being defensive? Because I think a lot of people do get quite defensive when they talk about D&I topics. Remove all of your ego away and look at the stats and be like, this looks funky here. Like maybe we're not doing something quite right. What can we really do differently? What can we really do differently? Ask the challenging questions. And then finally, not wanting to make that financial investment, whether that's, changing up the mat leave, whether that's um, looking to do kind of uh, a female-led mentorship scheme or something like that, really kind of putting in the work. Because
Yeah.
with a lot of this stuff, like policies have to change, and maternity leave is quite a big one. And I think with some companies, that's how they've been able to get a bit more of an equal balance, because their maternity leave is good,
Hmm.
so women will be more likely to come, to stay there as opposed to leaving. And then they've given themselves actual targets. So they said, okay, well, by the year of 2030, we're going to have a 50-50 manager split, for example. And then they publish that on their website, and it shows, when I see companies that have that, it tells me that they give a shit about it, that they've made a public declaration to do and be better.
Yeah.
And that is a step in the right direction.
Yes. But not only that kind of declaration, but because that declaration will help people sometimes at the lower levels.
Mm,
But I think as we're talking about FTSE 100 and the highest levels of the companies, um, at the end of the day, you just need people in in the business who want to make it happen, who want to achieve real levels of diversity at the upper levels. And
mm,
I think, unfortunately, in these companies, this is why we end up in a glass ceiling situation where, they'll bring you in, yeah, we've got diversity, look at our percentages, right? But there will always be a glass ceiling for you. You
mm.
can't go past that level of maybe being a manager or something. That's it. Once you get there, that's it. Because they do not have the perception of you of someone who can lead an organization, lead, um, you can lead a team, you can lead a project, but that's it. You can't lead our company.
Yeah.
And and how do we change that? I'm not sure, but I think it comes down to people, and I think it comes down to what the people at the top truly believe, what they truly think of different types of people.
Yeah, I agree. Do you feel like, not thinking about your current company, but just in general, do you feel like you could reach those kind of C-suite positions? Is that an ambition of yours?
Well, I think reaching the C-suite positions, regardless of um, your background, is down to people with certain types of personalities and certain
Mm,
ways in which they work. And I don't think personally that is something that I will ever reach, but I do hope to go a lot higher than I currently am. Um, because my goals in life are not necessarily to reach that level of C-suite level. It's more to have life goals of being happy and being um, family orientated and that type of thing, rather than just you know career goals. And I'm not saying those people who have reached that thing are career goals, but I think there's a balance,
Yeah.
and that balance alongside me also being black, um, I think puts me at a disadvantage.
Mm.
So, you know, if I could, I'd love to reach, higher and higher and possibly those positions. But I think also being black and trying to reach those positions and
Having
being
a
family
family.
oriented and person and stuff like that, um,
Yeah, it's hard.
yeah, I don't foresee that being a possibility for myself. But it could be for somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm in the same boat as you. I mean, as our listeners know, I'm not really um like super passionate about work, so I couldn't see that's not an aspiration for me to reach those levels of seniority. I would like to be more senior in my career as I go on, but to reach that level is not at the moment at least, it's not something that I aspire to. Because just like you, I want to have the quality of life and, well, not saying you don't if you are in those positions, but I want to be more kind of family orientated um, than kind of career, thinking about my career and stuff. So I'm exactly the same. And I think if you're a black parent plus you're like a high flyer in your career, I think it's just really difficult. And you've got black kids and stuff navigating school and the complications that can come with having a black child in school and then trying to be like super senior in your career. I think it's a lot more extra things to consider and think about, a lot
Yeah,
more
and
plates to juggle
yeah,
than if you were a white individual being senior and then a white individual sending their white child to school. I think it's
yeah,
just other complexities on top of because of your race that you have to consider as well. So
exactly.
a bit more difficult, I think it can be.
And again, like I'll circle back to perception because I already in my career have perception issues,
Mm,
of working with people and them not believing that I could be what I am, even though they're paying me to be this person, right? So when I see a situation like there was with the Vogue editor-in-chief of
oh my
British Vogue,
gosh. Oh my
when he
gosh.
walked into his own building, and I think the security guard told him that I think he had to do collections in the back or something like
Yeah,
that,
it's like I work here. I'm the editor
and
in chief.
he's the editor-in-chief. That is the type of perception issues that I think give me a glass ceiling. Like I just do not see that as a possibility for myself. That's another example of, okay, I do see someone who is black in my in higher position, but even that person is facing that kind of racism,
I know,
you know
yeah, ridiculous.
so
There
it's
was the same story of
in
that
his own
barrister
building,
in his own building,
from
and
the
it's like
guy
I'm editor
from
of
the
chief
from the guy
of
that he
Vogue.
pays to sit in his lobby, you know
Doesn't make any sense. But even there was that incident where the female black barrister,
yes,
she walked in, she's a barrister, and I don't know who stopped her, but like security guard or something thought that she was a defendant, and it happened 4 times on like separate days, separate occasions.
yeah,
And it's like, no, I'm a what? I'm a barrister. I'm like super, super qualified,
yeah,
probably earning way more than you. Not that money makes a difference, but it was just exactly what you said. It's the perception thing of I just don't believe that you could be this.
yeah. Like she cannot be a barrister. Like, of course she's a
Of
barrister.
course, she's
She
a
has gone
barrister.
through all of the training and the grueling
Yeah, she's
work
qualifying,
that
just
everybody
like
else
any
has
other
to,
woman, a
and
white
she
woman, or
turns up, but her skin is not of the color that you expect. For some reason, you expect it, and therefore she's a defendant. She is someone who's committed a crime. You think she's someone who's committed a crime to be in
just,
court? Why?
I just don't understand. It's just weird.
Right? And
Maybe
she's
because
got all her paper and everything
In it,
and all the stuff, and you still, she's carrying all her bags and
briefcase,
stuff, right?
yeah.
And you still think she's the one who committed the crime. How?
I don't make it make sense. Make it make sense. I don't understand it at all. And what always blows my mind is like how people look at people so hard. Do you know what I mean? Don't you just like look and keep it moving? But people are looking at you and coming up with, and in the minute, the 10 seconds they look at you, they're already placing all this judgment and thoughts and what you can and can't be, and all this stuff's going on.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe I'm really simple, but I feel like most of the time when when I'm walking around, or even when I'm a client and someone walks past me or someone walks into the room, I'm not really thinking that deeply about who
You,
that individual
you know what?
is.
Yeah, I think there is unconscious bias for everyone.
Mm,
Yeah, but I think you're probably more aware of it if you are someone who is judged a lot of the time
yeah.
and who has to always change people's perception every time you're in a room with them. Um, then I think you're, more aware of it and try to think yourself about what you're thinking about other people because
Mm,
they do it to you. But if you're not that person and you're the one always placing the judgment and never has to think about the judgment that's being placed on you, then you just continue placing judgment.
yeah, that is very true. Do you think it's easier to hit kind of manager, senior manager positions in bigger organizations in consulting? I'm just thinking because a lot of those organizations they have quotas on like, well, not quotas, but like
Targets.
targets, yeah. There's ambitions onto where they, like how many black people, how many women, how many Asians, whatever it is,
Yeah.
are going to hit that particular grade. Whereas in smaller companies, you may be a company of 500 and there could only be three black people in those senior positions,
Yeah.
which is actually statistically a lower percentage than in those bigger companies, maybe with, I don't know, 10,000 employees, but then there's, I don't know, 150 managers at the top. That makes sense.
Right.
Like, do you think it's, I don't know, easier to?
Um, I think if there are more places available, then it must be easier
Hmm.
because if there's such few positions available, then most likely the people who will decide who gets the position, there's going to be basically some people against you, some people for, not maybe against you, but for the opposite, the opposite choice,
Hmm.
and therefore you're less likely to get it. But I think if there's a lot more positions available, then I think it must be easier to achieve that.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
know, it's not easy because it's it's quite a high level
Yeah. Yeah.
in some
Whenever you're hitting,
organizations.
yeah.
But I think it must be easier. But I think still at the same time, if you did actually work in these organizations, you looked around, you may not see a lot of black people um, at those levels, even manager and senior manager.
Okay. So I think that's everything I wanted to get off my chest. So I think that was a bit of an unburdening episode on kind of how we were feeling about this article and you know what our own thoughts are and what our own perceptions are. And again, if you want to come forward and let us know of any of the stories that you've experienced of um, being perceived differently because of kind of an external factor, whatever that may be. We'd love to hear your story. So please send us a DM. But I think we'll park it there and make this one a bit of a shorter episode.
Yeah.
So we will see you all next week. Bye guys.
Bye.
If you have any questions or dilemmas, email us on ordinaryblackprofessionals@gmail.com, or we can be found on Instagram and Twitter at ordinaryblackprofessionals. Also, don't forget to follow us, subscribe, and leave a rating and comment.